I now give the floor to the distinguished Deputy Permanent Representative of the Russian Federation to make a statement.
Уважаемый господин председатель,
Mr. Chairman, dear Xalisa, at the outset, allow me to congratulate you on your election to this position of responsibility and express the hope that under your leadership, we will be able to lend a positive impulse to the work of the UN Disarmament Commission. The Russian delegation stands ready to comprehensively assist you in this regard. Russia has been a consistent supporter of consolidating the UN's central role in maintaining global strategic stability and international security and strengthening arms control and non-proliferation regimes. We firmly believe that our priority is to comprehensively strengthen the UN disarmament machinery, with the UNDC being its integral part. In 2018, the UNDC started a new 3-year work cycle with a new agenda. We are to continue working on reaching agreements on recommendations for achieving the objective nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, as well as for facilitating the practical implementation of transparency and confidence-building measures in outer space activities with the goal of preventing an arms race in outer space. The international security and strategic stability environment has been causing growing concern recently. The arms control system, which has traditionally played the role of a central supporting structure in this area, is undergoing a crisis that has no precedence in modern history. Many essential arms control agreements are being dismantled or terminated. This has been largely due to the destructive activities of the United States, which has been aggressively trying to achieve a decisive military and strategic advantage. A major destructive factor creating risks for international security and strategic stability continues to be the United States activities to develop and deploy a global ballistic missile defense system in different regions of the world, accompanied by a buildup of their non-nuclear precision weapons capable of meeting strategic objectives. In violation of their obligations under the NPT, the U.S. retains its non-strategic nuclear weapons deployed in the territories of certain European states. These weapons are being modernized, as well as are their means of delivery, and NATO joint nuclear missions continue to be conducted involving non-nuclear weapons states members of the alliance in trainings on nuclear weapons handling and use. There's a need to put an end to this practice. Nuclear weapons must be withdrawn to the national territory of their possessor, and the infrastructure for their deployment in Europe must be eliminated. In this alarming context, we would like to underscore that Russia has unfailingly sought to make a substantive practical contribution to ridding the world of the threat of weapons of mass destruction. We are fully committed to the noble goal of building a world free of nuclear weapons. We are convinced that genuine progress towards nuclear disarmament can only be attained through consensus solutions and by pursuing a policy of balanced incremental reductions based on the principle of indivisible security and consistent with the need to maintain strategic stability. The Russian Federation has been pursuing this course for many years and has taken consistent steps to reduce and limit its nuclear weapons. Our country has strictly complied with the START Treaty. In February 21, the treaty was extended for another 5-year period at our initiative. Based on an agreement between the presidents of the United States and Russia, a comprehensive strategic stability dialogue was launched last year. This February, the United States suspended this dialogue with Russia indefinitely, and we have taken note of this. For our part, we believe that outstanding issues in the area of strategic stability will not vanish on their own. As a matter of principle, Russia remains open to constructive political and diplomatic efforts to reduce tensions and search for mutually acceptable, comprehensive solutions to existing problems based on the principle of indivisible security and equitable mutual consideration of parties' concerns. We also note with regret that some irresponsible Western politicians and experts have been making provocative, speculative allegations regarding the alleged possible use of nuclear weapons by Russia in the course of its special military operation in Ukraine. These false claims have no reasonable grounds whatsoever. They seek to ramp up anti-Russian hysteria and are intended for a public that is unfamiliar with the basic principles of Russia's security and defense policy, which is exclusively defensive. Despite the fabrications that we have heard today, the use of nuclear capabilities by Russia is only possible in response to the use of nuclear weapons or other WMDs against it and or its allies, or in the event of aggression against our country with the use of conventional weapons posing a threat to the very existence of the state. These criteria can in no way be applied to the scenario currently unfolding in Ukraine. Moreover, Russia firmly adheres to the principle that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. This and related principles have been consistently promoted by our country and were reaffirmed in joint statements and documents, including those adopted at the highest level together with the United States and China, as well as within the Nuclear Five. It should also be mentioned that the moratorium established by Russia on the deployment of intermediate and shorter-range land-based missiles remains in force. Its future will obviously depend on the scale and substance of ongoing activities to build up capabilities on our western borders and supply arms to the current Ukrainian authorities that NATO member states are currently undertaking. At the same time, the Pentagon is going ahead with decisions to deploy intermediate and range and shorter range land-based missiles in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. We reiterate our call to Washington to exercise prudence and abandon such plans. Russia has unfailingly advocated a strengthened non-proliferation regime based on the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. That treaty has recently been put to a serious test. On the one hand, we see clearly exaggerated demands from the supporters of nuclear disarmament and active promotion of the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which contradicts the NPT and weakens the nuclear non-proliferation regime. On the other hand, there is Washington's course towards dismantling the established system of non-proliferation and arms control agreements. In these circumstances, ensuring the sustainability of the NPT is a key priority for maintaining global stability. The 10th NPT Review Conference is scheduled to be held this August to review the functioning of the treaty since 2015. The conference will be a good opportunity to try to reverse the existing negative trends that may further erode the non-proliferation regime. We note the unacceptable situation around the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. More than a quarter of a century has elapsed since the treaty was opened for signature. However, it has yet to become an effective international legal instrument. Nuclear weapons-free zones are an important element of the non-proliferation regime. We see the establishment of such zones in accordance with Article 7 of the NPT and the assigning of protocols that provide for security assurances from to nuclear weapon-free zone states are an important factor in strengthening the non-proliferation regime as well as regional security and stability. We are concerned by the AUKUS alliance created by Australia, the UK, and the US, and its negative impact on the nuclear non-proliferation regime. We believe that this alliance provokes security and international security tensions and creates conditions that could trigger a new arms race, and not just in the Asia-Pacific region. Mr. Chairman, one of our country's foreign policy priorities continues to be the maintenance of an outer space free of weapons and preventing an arms race in outer space. We consider this to be as important as the total elimination of nuclear weapons. The risks of space becoming a springboard for aggression and war have recently become quite real. A number of states are pursuing a policy aimed at placing weapons in outer space, increasing the potential for the use of force, both kinetic and non-kinetic, against space objects and with their use, as well as at using outer space to conduct combat operations in order to achieve military superiority. They are implementing ambitious programs to develop weapon systems designed for the threat or use of force in space from and in respect of outer space. These actions may have a grave impact on international peace and security and arms limitation and reduction in general. In this context, it is crucial to develop a legally binding instrument on preventing an arms race in outer space with guarantees against the placement of weapons in outer space, the threat or use of force against space objects, and with their use. The Russia-China Draft Treaty on the Prevention of the Placement of Weapons in Outer Space, the threat or use of force against outer space objects could be a basis for this. The international initiative and political commitment of no first placement of weapons in outer space is currently the only existing instrument aimed at maintaining outer space free of weapons and can become a transitional step towards the PPWT. 30 states have already become full-fledged participants in this initiative. When discussing space security and transparency and confidence building measures in the context of preventing an arms race in outer space, we should also build on efforts made in other forums, first and foremost, the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. We are convinced that with the due political will in place, the members of the UNDC can and should bridge their differences and work actively and constructively on the agenda and achieve effective consensus outcomes. Mr. Chairman, to conclude, I would like to note that a number of delegations have insistently been bringing up the situation in Ukraine in our specialized body, and in that connection, I would like to note the following. The tragedy of Ukraine, which has been transformed into an instrument by Western states in order to carry out their geopolitical ambitions, is the most acute problem of today. The bloody anti-constitutional coup, which took place in Ukraine in 2014 with the direct support of the U.S., has provoked Kiev's 8-year aggression against the population of Donbass, who refused to accept and support the new authorities. That coup d'etat has resulted in a rise of neo-Nazism, blatant Russophobia, and violations of fundamental human rights, primarily the rights of the Russian-speaking population. Since the beginning of the year, there has been a sharp deterioration of the situation, and we received convincing evidence that Ukraine was preparing a full-scale invasion into the Donetsk and Luhansk People Republics in order to annihilate them. In mid-February this year, Kiev announced its plans to acquire its own nuclear weapons. We could no longer stand idly by. We had no choice but to provide Donetsk and Luhansk with support and launch a special military operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. Now our country is facing an unprecedented propaganda campaign being carried out by Ukraine and its Western sponsors, who are trying to use modern technologies to advance fakes and contrived stories about the actions of the Russian military in Ukraine. However, the facts points to Ukraine's participation, the radicals' participation in these crimes that are being attributed to us. No matter how hard our Western colleagues might try to prove the opposite using the most unpleasant methods imaginable. Thus, the UK presidency of the Security Council violated basic principles of the work of the Security Council and its rules of procedure, and fearing the truth, has twice declined our request to hold a Security Council regarding the glaring provocation of Ukrainian nationalists in the town of Bucha. We hope that such dirty tactics will not be used in this forum, and it will not become a platform for the spread of fakes and propaganda. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished Deputy Permanent Representative of the Russian Federation for his statement.